Now if you don't tell me where the money is... Oh no! Who the hell is this? I'm Riker, the biker. You bitch! What do you want from me? I'm an entrepreneur. Quick, Riker, hit the emergency teleportation switch! Why? You are a scalping son of a bitch! You son of a... Ugh, my head. You need to repent for your sins. You want me to play Sonic the Hedgehog? F***, this game sucks! I don't like emulation. Nope. What the f***? I missed? Ha! You suck! Yeah, that was pretty pathetic. Look, I don't need criticism on how to kill myself. Well, you're gonna need a lot more than that, buddy. How much are we talking here? About twice as much. Like 2 guns? No, he obviously means 2 of those. Picture this. The year is 1992 and a whole slew of games released that year. Mario Paint for the Super Nintendo, Kid Chameleon, Super Mario Land 2 for the Game Boy, Final Fantasy V, the first Shin Megami Tensei game, Streets of Rage 2, and of course, Sonic the Hedgehog 2, probably the biggest game to release that year. I've already explained my history with Sonic once before, but I don't mind doing it again for those true Sonic fans out there. So my first instance with Sonic the Hedgehog in video games by a whole was thanks to this piece of shit right here, the Sega Genesis plug-and play, or as I like to call it. This thing came packed in with 6 games: Alex Kidd, The Ooze, Echo the Dolphin, Game Ground, Columns, and Sonic the Hedgehog 2, which was really the main game that I played on this thing. The other games were cool, just not really as interesting or intriguing as Sonic 2, honestly. Like, The Ooze is there, you know, but if you were to put this up against Sonic 2, I'm gonna pick 2, no question. Now, if you were to put Echo the Dolphin up against Sonic 2, I'll have to get back to you on that one. Even though I played this game religiously as a child, it was a similar situation like with Sonic 1, where the furthest I ever got was the second zone. To be fair, in Sonic 1's case, it was littered up and down with traps and enemies. With Sonic 2, I just got stuck in the same place over and over again and either drowned or was crushed, but that's not gonna happen today. I'm on a mission to finally put this game to rest, but before that, let's start with the history. You just love seeing me suffer, don't you? So Sonic really was Sega's love child. The first Sonic the Hedgehog game was a massive success. It gave Sega everything they were looking for: a stylish and recognizable mascot, a redefinition of the platformer genre, a lot of money, and more importantly, a viable competitor to Mario. After the release of the first Sonic the Hedgehog game, programmer Yuji Naka decided to quit Sega of Japan for a multitude of reasons, while over in America, video game designer Mark Cerny would establish the Sega Technical Institute, or STI for short. He'd later convince Yuji Naka and a couple of other Sega employees of Japan to come over to America and help develop Sonic 2, and that's exactly what they did. Like, come on, what else were they gonna do, stay in Japan and help work on this? Development began in November of 1991 and would release a year later in 1992, though it wasn't always smooth sailing throughout the development process. There were communication issues because of the different languages and a good amount of cut content from the final release. The most prominent one would have to be Hidden Palace Zone, which you can access through cheat devices, but I wouldn't recommend it. It looks borderline unplayable and roach infested. Other stages such as Wood Zone, Genocide City Zone, which was later renamed Cyber City Zone, a desert level, and Neo Green Hill Zone were also cut from the game, and I think that one was for the best. I don't even know what the hell a Neo Green Hill Zone would look like. The game released in November 24th, 1992 and was actually a pretty big deal back then. See, this released the same time in North America as it did in Europe, on a day that Sega decided to call Sonic Tuesday, and surprise surprise, the game released on a Tuesday. Wow, really? So Sonic the Hedgehog 2 was, dare I say, my favorite Sonic game of all time. Yes, I like this game more than this, and this. It was the first video game I ever played, so it's always gonna have a special place in my heart. Just like Echo the Dolphin. But what is it about Sonic 2 that makes it my favorite Sonic game of all time? Well, it's a lot of reasons. For starters, it was handled way better than the first Sonic game. I think I've made it apparent enough, but me and Sonic 1 don't really get along. Just the mere sight of it makes me want to chuck it out my window and hope it lands in the nearest trash fire, but at the same time, I am going to have a level of gratitude towards it because, I mean, it was the first ever Sonic game. Without it, we wouldn't have Sonic 2 or Sonic Forces, but that doesn't excuse the issues that I have with it. The level design is super inconsistent and seemed like they dragged on for far too long, making the pacing slow and tedious. There was no real incentive to complete the game 100%, you were only allowed to build up speed for like 2 levels, and Labyrinth Zone exists. In Sonic 2, everything's way faster, it's so much so that the screen can't even keep up sometimes. That's an improvement to write home about, especially on the Genesis in the early 90s. Alex Kidd wishes he were as cool as this. The presentation for the game is really good, albeit being eerily similar to Sonic 1. It has a similar Sega logo, although this time instead of a blue stream going across, Sonic just runs past it twice like he's lost and doesn't know where he's going. It also has a somewhat similar title screen and music, but in this game there's a twist. The title screen starts off with a black screen introducing Sonic and Miles Tails Prower, a new character and Sonic's little buddy in the game. He's a two-tailed fox with the ability to fly for a short while, and that's all he really does. No I guess he does kill enemies sometimes and help out with boss fights here and there by doing an extra hit, but that's not really much in the grand scheme of things. He's less helpful and more of a hindrance at times, like he feels like he should be controlled by a second player. Wait a minute. Those sneaky bastards at Sega did cooperative play in a Sonic game in 1992, and it wasn't even that good! To be fair, it does work. It is co-op in a Sonic game where you and a second player can play through the game together, but it's one of those instances where you would want to be the second player. You are not going to be on equal footing if you're playing this with someone else. I've already mentioned that Tails has the ability to fly for a short while, but he also has infinite lives technically. This is probably due in part to the fact that you always leave Tails behind, so he's constantly seen flying back to you throughout a majority of the game. I just stated that Tails feels like he should be controlled by a second player, which that part is true, but the co-op aspect doesn't really feel like it's meant to be here. It feels like it's been shoehorned in just for the sake of cooperative multiplayer. Like, it's cool that they did it at all. I just think it could have been a bit more cooperative. Like, there could have been certain sections that require two players, like buttons that open secret doors for some extra lives, or alternate pathways that change the level design somewhat. You know, something that gives the cooperative aspect meaning, and not just tag along with Sonic for a little bit until you get bored. It's fine though, because if co-op isn't your thing, there's a new competition mode where you and a second player can race against each other for the fastest time. This seems way better than the single player co-op, mainly because no one has to feel left out here. You're both finally on equal footing. The only thing I see wrong with this is someone stepped on the screen and cut it in half with a butter knife. But those are just some of the new additions. What about the story? So Dr. Robotnik is back. That's it? He's still kidnapping animals and putting them inside robots, but he's also up to something else. Turns out he needs the Chaos Emeralds to power his new space station, the Death Egg, so it's up to Sonic and Tails to stop him. I wish it were Bowser. Sonic 2 was structured pretty much like the first game, albeit with some more quality of life improvements, I'd say. You're still running through levels and trying to get to the end of them. Rings are essentially still your health in the game, and you can still kill enemies by jumping on them. But that's not the only way you can kill enemies this time around, as there's a new move in the game which makes you invincible by 5%. This is the all-new Spin Dash, the new way to kill enemies as well as give yourself an instant burst of speed. This is easily one of the best additions in the entire game, and honestly feels pretty satisfying to pull off. You just crouch down, kiss your favorite thumb goodbye as well as your favorite button, and BAM! Instant speed. This move is so cool. Alex Kidd must be rolling in his grave right now that he couldn't do this first. The other quality of life improvements aren't really too major except for one. For instance, instead of going through 3 acts spread across 6 different zones, you're now going through 2 acts spread across 10 zones, with all of them being longer than the first games. I'd say the real major quality of life improvement would have to be the special stages. I mean, look at them, they're way better than the last games. Sonic 1's special stages were all about seizures and the increase of drug use, and it doesn't really help that they weren't really fun to control either. You're just spinning here, so not only are you going through one of Sonic's high moments, but you're also getting dizzy too. That is f***ed up! Sonic 2's special stages handle almost entirely differently than Sonic 1's. The only real similarity they have is the ring threshold and objective. In Sonic 1 you collect 50 rings and hold on to them until the end of the level, then jump into a giant ring to enter the special stage. In Sonic 2 it's similar, but not. You're still collecting the 50 rings, but instead of a giant ring at the end of a zone, you now have these sparklers around one of multiple checkpoints, and by jumping into them, magic. This is what I call a special stage to write home about. They look way more interesting here, and are actually pretty fun to control, but Jesus Christ, Tails, keep up! The main stake here is you collect the required amount of rings in this 3D space in order to get the Chaos Emeralds, as opposed to Sonic 1 that had you spinning for dear life and hope to guide you on epileptic. The reward is still the same here, you complete the objective and get the Chaos Emerald, but unlike Sonic 1 which had you collecting 6 emeralds, you now collect 7, and it actually feels like something of worth. Collecting all the emeralds in Sonic 1 netted you a half-assed ending with flowers that you can easily watch on YouTube. Thus, I didn't do it, but collecting all the emeralds in Sonic 2 nearly makes you a f***ing god. This is Super Sonic, basically 90% invincibility this time around. By collecting all 7 Chaos Emeralds and collecting 50 rings, you can unlock this beast of a character, and it actually feels like an accomplishment. It pushes you to want to collect all of the Chaos Emeralds here, and it doesn't feel as repetitive because the special stages are actually fun. Super Sonic controls pretty much exactly like Sonic, just more buzzed up on energy drinks. That sounds rough. He's a lot faster and is invulnerable to spikes, enemies, and bosses, but that's about where the 90% invincibility ends, however. He can still die from being crushed, drowning in bottomless pits, but if you ask me, that's still a lot better than this. All of these new additions and improvements already put Sonic 2 leagues above Sonic 1 as the better game, and a lot of them are minor in comparison to the more major ones. But what about the stages? Oh god! The first zone up is Emerald Hill Zone, and if this is supposed to be a successor to Green Hill Zone, it is a very good successor to Green Hill Zone. This level's so bright and vibrant in comparison. Everything just pops a lot more here and makes you want to focus more on the environment and background. Like Green Hill had blue water, but Emerald Hill has better blue water. It's also a lot more fast paced compared to Green Hill and Sonic 1, and that's mainly due to the spin dash. This level was pretty much made for it. There's a lot of flat ground to work with here, as well as a fair amount of loops, little hills, and more areas for precise platforming. Like I said earlier, the levels have now been split into 2 acts instead of 3 like in Sonic 1, which is a godsend. Sure, the acts are longer here than they were in Sonic 1, but they don't feel as arduous to go through. They feel good. That sounds almost too good to be true. This level also encourages a good amount of exploration like in the previous game. If you wanted to get Supersonic as quick as possible, you could technically do that within both acts of Emerald Hill Zone. Chemical Plant Zone is next, and like I said earlier, this one was similar to Marble Zone for me, where this was the furthest I ever got, but unlike Marble Zone, this level is way better. It's faster and looks more interesting. The music here is fantastic, and also like Green Hill Zone, I'm getting tired of seeing it in every damn game. Aesthetic wise, I think it looks pretty damn cool. It's got that laboratory look to it, scattered about with robots and machines, and it's also where Sonic will go the fastest he's ever gone. Look at this! Can Alex Kidd go that fast? Unlike Marble Zone and Sonic 1, I actually like this level. It's really fun and fast paced, which is kind of surprising considering what we got before this. But as I mentioned earlier, there's a certain obstacle I have to overcome first, so let me tackle that real quick. First time jitters, I got it this time. Third time's a charm. Aquatic Ruin Zone is hands down my favorite level in the entire game. This is what Labyrinth Zone should have been. It's far less annoying and a lot faster paced. Also, get this, you can actually go through the entire level without even touching the water. It doesn't mean I did. That's the main thing I love about this level. You have the option to choose between 2 totally different pathways. You can choose the quicker upper pathway where you're hardly going to touch the water, or you can choose the slower, more explorer heavy bottom pathway where you're going to be underwater. This level encourages exploration to some extent, which is honestly pretty surprising for a linear 2D platformer where your main objective is to reach the end of a level. It's kinda short-lived though, because Aquatic Ruin is pretty much the only one to do this and everything else goes back to being linear. Sonic in 1992 encouraged more freedom than you ever did, bitch. Casino Night Zone, the place where Sonic refuses to be responsible with his money. No wonder he's always naked. This level's a bit of a mixed bag for me. At some points it's one of the most fun levels in the game, and others it's pretty annoying. It's a casino level through and through, but it has pinball elements, and I'm no expert on casinos, but I'm pretty sure you're not going to be playing Sonic Pinball Party there. That's the annoying aspect of it. It's full of so many pinball bumpers that just end up slowing you down for the most part. Like, it's not completely terrible. I got some enjoyment out of the first 2 pinball bumpers, then after that it got kind of annoying. The real meat and potatoes here is the casino aspect where Sonic loses all of his money. It's just slot machines and that's pretty much it. Nothing else like blackjack, pool, the big 6-wheel, or dice, which is kind of a shame considering all these different little casino minigames could have enhanced the gameplay here. Like, the dice could have been used as platforms, and the pool sticks could be chargeable springs like these ones. Hilltop Zone is next, and god damn it, it's Marble Zone all over again! The best level in the game, mind you! It is definitely a Hilltop Zone. It bears some resemblance to Marble Zone in my opinion, and I'm not really too keen on that. It's not really by much though. The similarity I see, which just so happens to be the main thing I find annoying with this level, is that it goes underground and is full of lava. It's not all bad though. I can at least say that this is actually way better than Marble Zone, but then again, is that really an accomplishment considering the whole game is? Mystic Cave is up next, and I really like this level. It's pretty fun. It's got a good amount of exploration going for it and a really nice theme, but what I really like about it are the different platforming mechanics, so to speak. Yeah, they slow you down a little bit, but not too much like say Marble Zone or Casino Night Zone where you would just flat out get stuck sometimes with the different pinball doodads going on. It's a lot more friendly in comparison. You hardly ever find yourself getting stuck here besides this one pit of spikes, but that's really about it. The main thing you'll be doing that'll slow you down is really just grabbing these vines to open up paths in order to progress further in the level, and I guess the occasional moving blocks here and there. It's not really a repetitive thing though, so it's fine. The only thing I don't really like about this level are the occasional pits with spikes in them. It's not really a continuous thing with Mystic Cave, but it can be a bit annoying sometimes, especially if you have a lot of rings saved up. Oil Ocean Zone. The story of my life. Oil Ocean Zone is fine. It's not the best level and it's not the worst level. It's just not my cup of tea personally. I don't really have a knack to say I'm an Oil Ocean supporter and let the whole world know about it. I don't really have much to say about this one. It's like an oil factory and that's all it really has going for it. It's definitely one of the more boring things in my opinion. It's not all that interesting. Oh man, Metropolis Zone is next, and this is less Metropolis than a Metropolis Zone can get. It's pretty much like Scrap Brain Zone here. It's not that fun, and the worst part is it has 3 acts. I thought you've matured since then. This level really isn't that good. You're hardly able to keep a steady pace of speed here. The enemy placement is annoying, and these damn screws. You're supposed to run on them like a treadmill in order to get to a higher pathway. Now that sounds very straightforward, but they put spikes above one of them, and now I'm questioning my worth as a human being. It's not that big of a deal though, because immediately after there are no spikes to speak of, which is some bizarre level design decision making, and when I say bizarre, I really mean bad. I don't really have much of an opinion on this level other than it's not fun. It's pretty much just Scrap Brain Zone but with a more Sonic 2 spin, I guess. Sky Chase Zone is next, and this is a pretty different level. We're not only controlling Sonic here, but we're also controlling Tails' plane. Okay, I say controlling Tails' plane, but it's more so just moving Sonic and the plane moves alongside him. It's not necessarily controlling the plane, but kind of is at the same time. It's a lot more slower paced than the other levels, and is essentially just an auto-scroll level, but it's not all bad. It didn't make me want to drink Listerine like the last game. Wing Fortress Zone is the final traditional level, and holy shit is it hard to keep your footing here. This level has fear of heights written all over it. Take one wrong step and it'll more than likely be your last. That's why I sleep downstairs 6 days of the week. I'd say this is probably the hardest level in the game, honestly. It feels like you're walking on eggshells, like one wrong jump could end it all, and in my case it did. After all of those different and somewhat annoying yet really fun zones full of trials and tribulations, the Death Egg Zone is the final stretch. This final boss is pretty interesting, and I say that because there are 2 of them. You fight Mecha Sonic first, then the Death Egg Robot immediately after, so they're pretty much like final boss phases. The only problem is you have no rings, so you know what that means! They're pretty decent final bosses, although I will say I don't really understand the inclusion of Mecha Sonic here. I think that feels kinda shoehorned in to make the Death Egg Zone seem a lot longer, and in that case, why not just have us go against the previous boss fights up until we make it to the actual Death Egg, or at the very least, give us a Mecha Tails boss fight as well. Like you went through all that trouble to make Robot Sonic, but you couldn't be bothered with the new guy in town? Like if you look at this from Dr. Robotnik's perspective, I guess it would kind of make sense, but at the same time, not really, considering the Death Egg seems like more of a threat than Robot Sonic. Like, come on, Sonic's been jumping on those the entire game. Now the Death Egg Robot itself, well, that's a big boy. This is a much better final boss than Sonic 1's. Sure, it has its moments and the attack patterns will take a little bit of time to get used to, but for the most part, I'd say this was a much better experience. And then after you beat the Death Egg, boom, credits! And that's Sonic the Hedgehog 2. A radical improvement when compared to the first game. It's a lot faster paced, the level design is leagues better, and the inclusion of Super Sonic just give the game a sense of replayability, which I must add, Sonic 1 didn't have, so the fact that we actually have a valid reason to collect the Chaos Emeralds now already put the game in a higher position of power. Like comparing Sonic 2 to Sonic 1 is like comparing God to graffiti artist. So basically what you're trying to say here is, it's a good game. Pretty much. I still don't get what this has to do with me being here. I told you need to repent for your sins. I just wanted to scalp a game on eBay. See, what I tell you, he's a scalping son of a bitch. So you owe me $5. I'll give you $5 if I can go home. Hello? Hello? Why couldn't these games be made with CD disc technology?